Wow, what's up everyone? It's been so long. I've been in the process of moving. Sometimes life stuff happens, but we're back today. Just want to get back on the YouTube grind. I'm gonna do a short video with a topic that's really in my wheelhouse to get the wheels moving again. We're gonna talk about relationship tips for Scorpios. This applies right to anyone that has strong Scorpio in their chart. I have a Scorpio moon. I identify with the Scorpio archetype in a lot of big ways. And I think this video will be helpful. I think it's geared to be positive, practical kind of tips for people to manage their Scorpio energy in a relationship. And that sounds a little bit like negative or pejorative. Not managing it, but nurturing it, working with it, expressing it, becoming aware of it, right? All of those things. I think the number one most important thing, and maybe it's obvious, Scorpio, pick your partners well. Make sure that the individuals that you choose, you're choosing them because there is a lot of alignment with your values, that they're a person where you can be your rawest, most authentic self around, and that they're someone that is really going to nurture your growth, give you space to nurture your growth, help you grow, challenge you, not too much, but a little bit. Someone that is looking at relationships as something of a soul bond, a lifelong partnership, someone that takes the idea of marriage seriously, not because the law is involved or because it's kind of this cultural institutions, but because there's a sort of spiritual opportunity and growth opportunity that comes when you power up with someone that you deeply love and that you are also friends with. For Scorpios, your partner is going to have such a huge effect on you, right? It affects your energy. You're very sensitive to their energy. You're going to absorb a lot of their energy. You are going to hyper-focus a lot on their energy. So you need to be smart. Sometimes Scorpios, in an effort to avoid potential betrayal, heartbreak, uncertainty, whatever, sometimes they can rush to lock things down and control things and define things, or maybe they rush into these hyper intense commitments because it's a way they're not always thinking about, oh, is this, are our paths aligned? Sometimes it's more like they're thinking too much about the fear. They know they like them, but they're fearful. So, okay, let's move to the next steps. Sometimes you gotta take a step back and you have to let things develop until you are confident that, that's a good person. And trust your intuition. Keep listening to your intuition. Scorpio's intuition is very powerful. Number two, going off of why it's so important to pick your partner, is that Scorpio still is going to need space, even in the context of a very close relationship, for upheaval. It's the Plutonian nature. It's so, so essential to the Scorpio archetype of death. Not literally, it's metaphorical, symbolic. Death, rebirth. It's hyper intensity. It is sometimes obsessiveness. It's excess in one very specific vector until it's so top heavy that everything crushes, or there's excess importance. And so there needs to be total destruction and annihilation. And then from that comes the metaphorical phoenix. For Scorpio, that cycle can play out in the context of relationships. And sometimes that's something that has to happen. Sometimes though, that's because a Scorpio hasn't given themselves space for that type of scorpionic cycle to exist in a somewhat manageable way, like they attach it to a partner. You want to be careful about inadvertently sabotaging relationships because you haven't taken that space. A Scorpio can get in such a close-knit relationship that's great, but then suddenly they feel so constricted and they think, oh, I gotta get out, I gotta destroy the whole relationship, gotta break up, whatever. When sometimes a more intermediate solution would have been to maybe have an uncomfortable conversation with a partner and say, hey, things are great, or hey, we live together, or hey, all these things, but I need more alone time, or I need this space. Carving out those opportunities to have some alone time, just literally alone time to just exist and to think and to be creative and to ponder and to be anxious and to be sad and to be happy, just alone without sometimes the energy of another person at all or having to think about it. It's really important for a Scorpio. However you're doing it, Scorpio, whether that's actually like taking days apart, whether it's having a physical spot, whether it's having hobbies, having other activities, figure out how you can kind of create that space. You do kind of merge with a partner, but there needs to be some deliberate space that's just yours, right? It's gonna make you feel more secure. It's essential to your emotional regulation. Number 3, I think this is something that's totally applicable to all relationships, with mature, healthy individuals, especially applicable to water signs and definitely to Scorpio, is having these like regular team meetings, family meetings with your partner, a time to go over maybe things that have happened in the month, like goals, things that maybe didn't get discussed that you want to discuss. I think that this is definitely something that's like trendy on, you see these tips on some like wellness influencers accounts, and like for good reason. I'm not like making fun of it. I just feel like a lot of people see that and they say, oh, that's a good idea, and then they like don't actually implement it. Because implementing it does seem a little silly. It's overly formal, and plus like doesn't necessarily mean those conversations are always going to be 100% great, right? It's like, oh, this is a time to just like tell me about how you were pissed that I didn't unload the dishwasher for like 2 days, like 3 weeks ago. I'm not saying all these monthly meetings are going to be like that, but they are good check-in points, because I do think there's a natural tendency sometimes for water signs to not repress emotions, but they experience a lot of emotion, and it's so much that they feel that they don't always have operations to express all of it. And so really the TLDR concern is holding any kind of like emotional resentment. Any resentment that's like cancer to a relationship. So having these like built-in checkpoints maybe can be a way to open the release valve on some of that pressure and really, have these conversations. And even sometimes expressing those things isn't easy. Like it really does contribute to, I think, longer term trust and intimacy with a partner. Number 4, are we on 4? I haven't made a video in a while, so I forget how to count. Not that I've ever been good at providing reliable numbers in these videos. I say like, oh, I'm gonna do 3 things, and then I do 5, or I do 2. Shoot me, what are you gonna do? All right, so number 4, and this one's pretty straightforward. Scorpio, have go-to protocols for dealing with really intense emotions. It's helpful to even write these down or create like the handbook for being me, right? This can be like a living Word document that you add to over the course of your life. And it could be like, oh, when you're angry, like these are quotes, or like when you're angry, like these are the things that I like to do. Or like when I am feeling discouraged or frustrated, like these are quotes that hype me up. When I'm depressed or in a funk, like these are the things I know bring me out of it. It's because like when you're in those like emotionally dysregulated states, it's hard to remember that stuff. And if you have them written down, you can see, oh, like, yeah, that's something that I know helps. And then eventually that helps form actual kind of just automatic habit. I say these things because the emotional experience is rich and intense and chaotic and beautiful and horrible and heartbreaking and blissful, like all of those things at once for a Scorpio. It's a lifelong process of mastering that. But this is a way to help do that. And I think it's important because in the context of a relationship, it's easy sometimes to attribute too much to your partner or think that like they're responsible for it or they're the ones primarily responsible for making it better. They can help, but you're the captain of your own ship at the end of the day, always. And you need to take ownership of how you care for yourself, because if you can't do that, the foundation from which you care for other people is inherently not flawed, but the integrity is threatened, right? Think about these things. And one of the most relevant things is like when you're angry, right? Or you're really pissed at your partner, or you're jealous, and you know what I'm talking about, that like scorpionic intensity attack of emotions where you start obsessing over it and you got to deal with it. You feel like you have to confront your partner. Like having, again, ways, things that you know that, oh, I should do this before I do that. Personally, I've had a lot of bad fights or blow-ups or just bad confrontations, mostly with past partners, which like weren't really, intended to work long-term anyway, but where I kind of think like in retrospect, yeah, if I would have just gone for a run or something like that and said, hey, I'll send that email tomorrow or I'll have that conversation tomorrow, things would have been a lot better. But in the heat of the moment, you're like, no, I'm launching the nukes. It's got to happen right now. Those are fine mistakes to make. In your early relationships and with the right partner, they should forgive you because no one's perfect and you will make mistakes. But sometimes Scorpios with their emotional intensity can make like big mistakes or they can say hurtful things. And those things do, you might get a couple bullets, but you can't make a living out of those things. Even if you say, well, it was, I was in the thick of a scorpionic attack and I was overwhelmed by emotion, and it's not really those things erode the health of relationships. So you got to have ways of managing all of it. And I'm not telling you how to do that, but pay attention, journal, observe yourself, notice when you have a moment where you're like, oh man, I feel like a lot better. I could have just done this. Maybe you're just literally dehydrated and haven't been sleeping well. And like 99% of your problems could be attributable to that. And like eating too much sugar. Maybe, probably not, but it's a helpful thing to think about. And I think lastly, Scorpios have conditioned themselves sometimes to hold so much in just because they're so intense, they're so sensitive. A lot of Scorpios have childhood or adolescent or young adult experiences where sharing some of the intensity was not received well. And so they're like, yeah, people can't handle it. I'm going to hold on to everything. Or sometimes there's a fear that the thoughts or the feelings are just so dark, that you're used to them, that they can come and go, but you don't want to burden people with them by servicing them all the time. Anyways, sometimes that conditioning can cause you to be a lot more secretive than you sometimes think that you are. You don't have to share every single emotion or thought or thing you experience. For Scorpio, it is a lot that's unique to you that you kind of have to manage and bear, but don't keep your partner in the dark. If they're the right person and they do care about you and your energies are really aligned, they will want you to share those difficult feelings, and they want to be part of the club. They want to know. They want to feel like they're let in on things. And this is sort of going too far in the direction of number 4. It's like when you become too self-reliant or, too shut down, it's just hard. Maybe from the other person's perspective, it's hard to get in. They can't enter, they can't read, they can't pull down the walls. And, we all have our moments, but if that's a long-term thing, it can be problematic. All of these things are to say, the biggest thing to keep in mind for Scorpios, although abstract in the context of relationships, is staying in between the extremes, like creating space for you to take advantage of the healthy dynamism and the intensity of Scorpio nature without letting your emotional dysregulation go too far in a certain direction. Having ways to self-soothe and address your own needs, but not shutting other people out, taking alone time when you need it, but not necessarily checking out a whole relationship in order to get it. Like, these things maybe are simple or they seem obvious, but for the emotional lens that a Scorpio lives through, that balance isn't intuitive. It's hard, it's a challenge. And if you're not good at it, that's okay. It takes practice. But I think that's the overall North Star, something to keep in mind. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm glad to be back. More content coming. Thank you for staying patient. I appreciate all my fans and viewers and supporters and everyone that appreciates the content so much. And hope you all have a great week.